has got a lot to share.
Welcome to another edition of Radio Friends again. This being the 20, oh my God, is that 28th of June, 2024. And I'm Steve Parker here in Berlin, Connecticut. Now we've got a nice group of friends already gathered with us this morning. And we've got, let's see, Tracy Carmen's up there. Pete Salanka, morning, Peter.
Good
John
morning,
Landry's
Steve.
here. Ted Dalagoo, Bob Marks, Ed Bruder, Dave Overson's here. We've got Peter Bush. Hi, Peter. And,
hey,
it's all the way.
What's happening?
And Bob Craig and Ron Pell. I think we've got everybody pretty much covered there. And it's so hey Peter, how you been? Give us bring us up to speed with what's been going on in your world.
Well, Peter, not Pete, but Peter. Yeah. Gosh, the other day, Peter reached out to me and mentioned the WDRC reunion. Now, of course, coming from the 13 WAVZ, KC 101, WB 108, PLJ, WABC background, recognizing the fact that WDRC, it was on my radar as a kid, even here living in New Canaan, as a boy interested in radio. I recognized that WDRC was one of the greats, and I had no idea. It became obvious to me how much radio talent there really was in Connecticut. And so recently, Peter sent me a text saying that there's this reunion that you guys have every year. And I'm thrilled that I've been invited as an outsider from outside the immediate inner core DRC, families. It's cool. So I hope to attend on August 18th. Besides that, I've got, I don't know, we had a tree fall down, and then we had a leak in the irrigation system. And so I've been kind of keeping busy with that. Did 2 weeks in Spain, which was fantastic.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, this is a great way for me to reconnect to a radio background that I've kind of lost touch with, I think, over the years. But this is so cool. And thank you for having me.
Oh, no, Peter.
Welcome
and
aboard.
thanks for Pete Salant bringing us all together on this.
Really? Yeah.
I think one of the things that Ron and I started doing the whole reunion thing back in 2010 when it was 50 years of rock and roll for DRC, since my dad flipped it on the 18th of August 1960. And we've always tried to stress every year that it really is. We want all of Connecticut radio to come in. And the fact that, if you guys can reach down to the southern part of the state and other areas, that's really what we've wanted. And I think because Ron and I, have that connection back to DRC, sometimes people don't quite understand it is Connecticut. And Lee Gordon had a whole POP reunion that he brought in. So now it is. We try to keep it.
That's how it all started. Thanks to Lee.
Yeah. Lee was the guy, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yep.
So we just want to, we encourage that. And it was a couple of years ago, Peter, that when we were, DRC wasn't doing a 100th anniversary and not even understanding that they had the oldest radio station in Connecticut. John Fuller has got his hands into a lot of different things and his head somewhere else. But, the problem that we really ran into was nobody was really putting forth any kind of effort to do a 100th birthday. So that's how we started the whole Zoom thing. And we just started, it was a couple of years ago, we just started having so much damn fun. And only 10% of the call had anything to do with a reunion. So that's why we do it today. So every time we have somebody new jump into the group, it brings all kinds of energy and synergy. And it really is something. And I've said, even though some of the guys may have gotten out of the business never gets out of you. And it's kind of nice to get back to your roots. So if you could, for me, Peter, we got Dick Calt signing in here. If you could, Dick. Here he comes. If you could, Peter, just give us an idea or give me an idea. I mean, especially with your Southern Connecticut stuff going on and of course going on into the city and a huge career. Could you give us a bit of a rundown, kind of a synopsis of where your life has been?
Yeah, go back to your resume. Go back to your resume.
Well, oh, sure. I mean, let's see. Thanks to Pete Salant, opening the radio doors for me when Peter was a disc jockey or maybe program director at WRNW in Mount Kisco. Of course, that if you follow Howard, you know that RNW Howard had a bit of a time, and then we got to know Pete, and he actually let me come over and play disc jockey for the very first time in my life. He let me queue up a record at WRNW. I think we're all pretty high. It's pretty funny. And so at that moment, I went from CB radio and ham radio as a kid. I said, well, this is fantastic. So very cool. And then I got my first job at WINE, WRKI, Wine in Danbury. That was my first gig, making $80 a week. Then I didn't want to go on and do the rocker bit when Wine went to I-95. So Pete came back at me and offered me a job at 13 WAVZ, where that was the core learning experience for me, because Pete really knew so much. You know, Salant was really far ahead of everybody else in terms of just not only programming, but audio, presence, promotion, marketing. He had it all. So how could I turn that down? The guy that taught me the very basics of radio gave me an opportunity to go to New Haven, Connecticut. And, you know, like New Haven was a big deal. New Haven was a big, like, Broadway sub-market, right? All the Broadway shows. If they worked in New Haven, they would work somewhere else. So Peter gave me that opportunity. We had a lot of fun at WAVZ. You know, Judge Harrigan, Lee Roberts, who else? That was before Danny. Geez, it was a lot of fun. 13 WAVZ, you know, everything was tight and right, and you know,
1,000 watts, but
1,000
sounding
watts.
like a million. Yeah,
it sure did. And then Pete fired me because I was sounding too much like WABC, and I might have been mimicking Ron Lundy's one day and Dan Ingram the next, which was not really the thing I should be doing. I should have been paying attention and doing what Peter told me to do. And so I got out of the business for a little while, sold skis, went back to wine, you know, and eventually through an air check that Pete made at WAVZ for me with the WABC jingles, with like me sounding like I was on WABC. It was
77 WABC.
Well, no, Pete produced this wonderful air check. So we mimicked, let's say, a given scoped hour or two on WABC, and he had the jingles. I mean, where does he get this crap? But he had all this stuff. And you know, only Salant has this like library of everything that has to do with radio.
No,
So
Tracy Carmen's the guy, but
okay,
anyway.
we put the air check together. We sent it to Rick Sklar. I got a letter back in about a month, and he said, Peter, loved what you did. Never got anything like this in my mailbox before. He said it really sounded like you were on WABC. So as a result of that, I'm going to put you on the ABC radio. What do you call it? Farm system. Well, I didn't know what that meant. I moved on to KC 101, doing my thing. Peter was there. He, of course, flipped WAVZ to KC 101. I came back. We had a wonderful time there. And then I got a call from Steve Goldstein was working. Rick had gone. Rick had passed, I think. Steve Goldstein was working for an ex-Hartford, Jay Clark. Jay Clark was the next operations director, I believe, right after Rick died. And so Jay ran into the tape somewhere, in the file somewhere. They were looking for a part-time. And I got a chance to come down. I did a quick interview, and then I got hired. And it's the last thing in the world I ever expected was to be hired by WABC. I still don't understand why, but it was fantastic.
And in between somewhere in there, you spent some years at WB 108 in Bridgeport, right?
Sure. After
You were
ABC.
Afternoon Drive, and you were incredibly pivotal in their success.
Thank you. Yeah. But and I'm sorry to take up so much time, you guys. It is I don't know. I just still haven't really processed that whole time and place. To be there at the end. I was in the studio on the last show with Ingram and Lundy. Dan Ingram even mentioned that I was there, which I was. I mean, why would he say that? And we had Mayor Lindsay there and all the TV crews on that day, July 3rd, 82. Is that right? Maybe.
I don't know
when they flipped, but a fantastic experience. Lasted about 2 years. Worked 2 shifts. Filled in for Lundy a couple of times on some day shifts that I had to do, but it was a whirlwind. It was a fantasy come true. So, yeah, that's that.
So where did you go after that, Peter?
Yeah, really? Where do you go after that? Then, funny enough, then I get a call. I'm back at KC 101, and I get a call from Larry Berger, of all people. Now, if you knew who Larry Berger was the program director at WPLJ. And it was a rocker for many years, right? New York's best rock, WPLJ. Yeah. It's Dave Charity, WPLJ. Anyway, I get a call, and Larry says, we are changing formats, and we've heard of you, and we knew you were across the hall at 1330. And he said, come on down, let's talk. So I ended up at WPLJ for 2 years. That gig didn't work out. So then I went back and I went to KC to WABC, and spent a lot of years, like Peter mentioned, at WABC 108. And then left that bit, left radio there. I put it down for a while, sold cars. Whatever I had to do to make a living. And then I got called back again from those folks, Connoisseur Media, and I finished up at 95.9 The Fox, which is a classic rocker in Norwalk. And I did my last show. It'll be 5 years ago, I think, in December. So
Peter, nobody ever finishes up, Peter. And when people say to me, "Oh, I'm on the radio,"
that's good, Steve. Peter, do you recall when you were at WPLJ? There was a guy in New York. His name was Zachary. His name was John Zachary. And he actually was he had a TV show, and he was a ghoul. He was the host of this Chiller Theater on Channel 9 in New York. But he was a disc jockey at WPLJ.
Yeah, WPLJ, Zach here. All right, now let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
Zachary was originally from Philly. He, had that song. He had a recording that was somewhat of a big hit in the late 50s called "Dinner." What was it? A dinner with Drac.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, I think it was on the Philly-based Cameo Parkway label.
You mean Larry? Terrific jock too.
When I was 15 or 16, we had a band. This is before Alive and Kicking. We had called ourselves the Silent Souls, and we were in New York. We're in Brooklyn, and Zachary had a show on Channel 47 from Hoboken, New Jersey. Yeah. And in those days, that was VHF and UHF. And there was no cable, nothing like that. And we got on his show. We had local bands, you'd come on, and we got on his show. And I'll never forget that. Fast forward about 20 years later, I'm at a restaurant in New York, and we're online to go in. It's called Suan, a natural foods restaurant in Upper West Side. And I look ahead of me online, and I see, oh my God, there's Zachary. So I walk up to him, I said, excuse me, are you John Zachary? He says, I am. I said, I was on your show 20 years ago. He said, holy cow, that brings back memory. It was great. So we split up. Yeah. An hour later, he's leaving the restaurant, and he comes over, and he had made a cross out of chopsticks. And he hands me the cross. He said, thanks for remembering me.
Peter, Ron has had a major career in radio
A checkered
sales,
past, as they
yeah,
say.
whatever. But he was the drummer in the group Alive and Kickin'.
No.
Yeah, and that song
Yes,
Tighter,
dude,
Tighter. Yeah,
dude, I
Is
have that on. It's in one of my, it's a Pandora. I mean, it's one of my Pandora favorites, and I to this day, it's like if I need a go-to song, you know what song that is.
especially in the summertime.
Yeah,
That was a real summer song.
we're all pretty
Summer-
impressed with you, Ron.
Summer of
Thanks, yeah.
summer of 1970, major
That's correct.
major hit.
That was depending on which survey you looked at, we were in the number 3, 6, or 7, and the record sold well over 1 million copies.
Woman, you touch my soul now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the genius of Tommy James. Tommy James and the other guys have already heard this, but originally our connection to Tommy James was our manager and his wife were best friends, so we had a connection with him. And he came and saw us one night in a club in Brooklyn, and he said, "I'm going to write a song for you guys. You know, you're great. I'm going to get you a song." And originally, he was going to give us Crystal Blue Persuasion. And then he said, last minute, he said, "Nah, I don't think I'm going to give you that one." But I got another song I think could work because you got 2 lead singers. We had Sandy and Peppy with the 2 lead singers, girl and boy. He said, "I think I got a song for you," and that turned out to be Tighter, Tighter.
Yeah, it was not too bad.
It was okay.
When was it released, actually? Because I seem to recall actually playing it before I left Detroit.
Recorded in December of 1969, released in March of 1970.
Correct.
And it was a hit, and it really reached the top, the top 40 around June. I think it peaked at July, and it was off the charts by September. And that was the end of that.
I was playing it on WHMI because I remember that even before we met. And then, I mean, your story is fantastic.
Yeah. It is. It's a great story. WABC played the piss out of that record.
Oh yeah.
I was in a pool hall, collegiate billiards on Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn when the first night I heard that song being played. And one of the first nights, and it was like
Cousin
to hear
Brucey,
your song
probably, right?
on WABC was just because in those days it was ABC and the MCA Good Guys. Those were the 2 stations in New York. FM hadn't even started yet.
Yep.
And ABC, everybody listened to that, as you know. And that was some time. It was only 54 years ago.
Hey, Peter, where were you at WAVZ again?
Peter Bush.
Peter Bush.
77, right, Peter?
Yes.
77, 78.
Okay, that was well after because I seem to remember meeting you. I think you were at WELI, I think.
No, just WAVZ and KCI,
Oh, KCI. Okay.
I got there in the fall of '74 and stayed there as a jock for a while, then became the PD and stayed there through the convincing Dan and Dick to switch the AM to move the AM to the FM. So
wow,
I was there like 5 years.
Wow. Yeah. Were they ever smart to listen to you?
Well, they finally listened to somebody because every single PD of WAVZ tried to convince them, but the time was right.
Ron, you're killing me, man. The song is in my head right. It's just killing me right now.
And we also, I had to step out for a moment there. We had, believe it or not, a new furniture. We had table came in that we've been waiting for weeks, and at the same time they're building the table in a friggin' dining room. The guy with the guy with the weed whacker comes by. It's like it's like they got together and planned all this stuff. So I'm sorry.
No, I thought you're just going to take a leak.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Now
I got a guy mowing the lawn right next to the campsite next to me of all days, Jeez.
And we got as Dick Calt is here. Did I miss him saying hello to everybody?
Hey, Dick.
Yeah, I came a little bit late, but I wanted to say hello. And also, first of all, apologize. I couldn't join you last week because I was on a plane at that time on my way down to North Carolina to see my older girls. But I saw the video with my former partner and very good friend, Barry Berman.
Yeah,
and the rest of and everybody else from the news and the history of it. And it was I remember that time very, very well. Actually, PLR had very close relationship with the Connecticut Radio Network during the 70s. I don't remember getting all the way through whether he made a mention of it, but he and I worked on getting the very first radio buy for the Connecticut Lottery.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was in 1976 we handled it.
That's
And
huge.
stuff like that. Yeah, that's how we started working together before we went into business together. But I thought it was a great interview, especially important to cover the news history in this state. It really
but
is.
I think, Dick, I think the thing that would be very cool, and we all agreed afterwards, we got to get the two of you guys together, because when you hear, I mean, you guys really have always been like Walt and Roy Disney, okay? I mean, Barry's definitely Roy, and I mean Walt, but you're definitely Roy, and the fact that you always understood the numbers and the revenue streams and all that, and your mind just spun like a computer. And Barry could be like wandering around in his t-shirt and barefoot, and you'd be coming up with billions of dollars out of it, So I said, somehow it'd be great to have both of them on and look at it, because that was a perfect marriage. And the creativity with the financial side was always a mind blower. Barry would agree to anything, no matter what it took, and be sitting there spinning the numbers in his head. I always loved that.
Yes, we had those days where I wasn't quite as popular. But things worked out fine. I have to say, but it was great to see the video.
Yeah, we got that's maybe we'll work that out. Hopefully maybe we can get that done this summer and get the two of you on there together. And because I think a lot of people would like to be able to get that. And I never heard the whole thing from the very, very beginning.
Oh yeah,
which was kind of cool. And it's a neat thing to have. Just in your hip pocket to be able to talk about that. I tell people, as much as I can remember the story, I listened to it a couple of times. It's just, it's like divine intervention all the way through the whole walk to get this thing going. The way that things just came together like that was just amazing. But and then listening to the story, anybody involved with news has always been somewhat twisted in their mind, and always a great sense of humor in there. And we got to hear a lot of that. So. Yeah.
Did he tell you the story about Dr. Bob Harris?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Doctor, then not doctor.
Really not doctor, right?
Almost doctor. Yeah.
I think Dick's just had a remarkable career. Every aspect of the business, from promotion to production to creating a news network, Connecticut.
This man was the heart and soul of our main competitor, Peter. In New Haven. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a great career. You just seem to be at the right place at the right time, and you're bright, articulate, and dedicated to what you did, and it's really quite something. I mean, look how many hats. How many hats have you worn? I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
I've had an opportunity to do a lot of things, and God has been good to me. And I thank you also very much for your kind comments. One of the things I am most proud of is that this is the 47th year of the New Haven Road Race.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Which is the 20-kilometer national championship. Ron has run in it many, many times.
14 times.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
No,
47 years. I went to a reunion, a 40th reunion of all the runners. There were about 5 or 6 guys that had run in all 40 of them. And the thing is, the whole thing started out as a WPLR promotion. Yep. And I am so proud of the fact that the city got behind it and has turned it into a real tradition for the city for runners. And,
so you're running in it?
No, I will. I do intend, however, when it turns 50, I believe I'm going to be the official starter.
No, that's great. That's fantastic.
I was the official starter at 25, and I was the president of it for the first 5 years. But the funniest part about that road race, we had Bill Rogers the first couple of years, and I arranged to get Bill to run in it. I can't exactly tell you how I did that because I don't want to go to jail. But I will say that he was the nicest person to work with. And the funniest thing was that in the first year, everybody lined the streets and the runners would come by, but we needed to give a schooling to people watching a road race, because what they didn't understand is they had water stations, and what they would do is they would pour water on people on their legs and feet as they ran by.
Worst thing you can do.
That's what they thought.
Right.
they were supposed to do.
That's called Blister City. That's how you get a lot of blisters.
Yeah, you know, and you know, we were thinking, spray it up in the air, let them feel it, let them stop and drink it, but don't pour it on their
Pour it
feet.
on them.
Anyway,
like Seinfeld, pour a hot cup of coffee.
Yeah.
No, but I have to say I've been blessed, and all you guys. It's been such a wonderful opportunity to be part of this group, and also what it does is it points out that it doesn't matter if you compete, because we are all brothers in the same. We have the same
Absolutely.
passion, and
Indeed.
that's why I always had good relations with my competitors. I think the only person I ever had any difficult times with was what's his name at WNEW, who was programming NEWFM years back though. Back
Oh
then,
no,
Scott Muni.
Scott. Yeah, Scott.
I got along very well with the Nightbird. We shared an album cover
Allison
once
Steele.
for BOC, but what we used to do, I think I told you this, is we would get releases on records, and they say, well, you know, WNEW has to release it first. So we got an TV antenna and pointed it toward New York, and they would release it at noon, and we would play it at 12 o'clock in 5 seconds.
You know,
it would piss him off, but hey, you know.
Allison Steele, you know, the rock and roll weekend began when she was on Friday. It would be Friday night, 10 o'clock, Nightbird.
Yep.
And she would come on and she would say, come, fly with me, Allison Steele, the Nightbird, on WNEW-FM, New York. And for a long time, that first song that she would play was Riders on the Storm.
Ah, yes, yep.
She would always start, most of the time she would start with that. And it was like, wow, how cool is this? It's like, wow.
Well, then she
had the greatest voice.
Yeah,
she had the phenomenal voice, though. Her voice was like nothing else.
Oh yeah.
Nothing else.
She was a lovely, lovely woman, just a good friend. We were talking the other couple of weeks ago, I think it was when J-Bo was here. And you know, he's doing 70s on 7 on Sirius XM. And the daytime host there is a young lady named Lisa Evans out of Edmonton, Alberta. And she has the best voice, unbelievable. And she does morning drive there, and then she does like 6 hours of 70s on 7. But I'm going to write to her because I would love to have her come and join us for a session. A, for you to hear that voice, but B, she has the greatest sense of humor, but also to get a little more insight into what is it like being in Edmonton and basically programming for mostly Americans, even though they do have a lot of subscribers in Canada. I listen to her every day because her voice is addictive, and her just really is.
Yeah, she's great, and
you did a lot of stuff on Sirius XM. You did a wonderful job there. You're still on Sirius, right, Peter?
Oh no, never was. You know who's also no? I never worked there. You know who's got a great, and maybe you might or might not agree with me. Christine Stone.
I don't know.
What channel is she on?
She's on Classic Vinyl. She's on what's the other, Spectrum?
Yeah, sure. I've heard her.
briefly.
Christine Stone, wonderful voice. Got great pipes, super, really resonant. But yeah, no. Clearly, no, I never got to. Let me ask you a question. Do they pay anybody there?
Howard makes a few bucks.
Yeah, not much.
I mean, I hear it's really not much.
No. Well, of course they were going to fold until they merged.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Well, thanks to Howard Stern.
Well, Howard Stern basically floated the entire boat. If
He sure did.
He brought in, I believe it was something on to somewhere around 150 or 200,000 subscriptions instantly.
Overnight, right.
And they charged $20 for his show. And everybody said, well, wait a minute, they signed this guy to a $200 million contract. And when they did the math, he paid them out within a year.
Yeah.
So I mean, in terms of what he earned for them, he basically is still keeping them afloat, probably.
And
the
he sounds
first
better than he ever has.
Pete,
Mhm.
the first satellite initiative was a thing when I was finishing up at WABC. Dan, Ron Lundy, and I can't remember the third, were all going, yeah, man, it's been great. We got a new opportunity. Well, what are you guys going to be doing? Well, we're joining a brand new satellite radio network that we've created. ABC's creating Super Radio. Do you remember this, Pete?
And it never got, of course I
And
remembered. It never got off the ground because nobody
no, but it was
signed
a
up to it.
satellite-based,
Yep.
network.
I
And
That was
I bought the
was
jingles.
that was Jim Harrington, and
was that who?
yeah, Jim
Really?
Jim was their morning drive guy, and it was funny because I had heard about it from Kerry Paul, and Kerry Paul, just a great programming guy. God rest his soul. But he told me about this, and they were just looking for guys who wanted to kind of like get involved. No money until they got the thing off the ground. And
Right.
I told Jim, and they were going to be doing the ABC format, and Jim jumped right on and actually did the thing for a very long time, as long as the thing was going until it just kind of fizzled out. But he was, I mean, it's too bad because he was doing a great job with it. But yeah, I wish Jim was here. He'll hear this after the fact. But yeah, he was major with us.
What year was that?
Not that many years ago, was it?
82, 83.
Yeah,
Yeah.
82,
83.
yes.
Yeah, because I actually got contacted by somebody around that time, and I had just left TIC, and
Okay,
I
then
got
forget everything I just said.
Okay.
The thing that I was just talking about, Super Radio, was something that was just a few years ago they were trying to put in to compete with Sirius XM.
Okay. Well, I got contacted when I was out, and I flew to Chicago to have an interview with a guy. They were starting up the satellite radio network, and he wanted to do an interview with me. So he said, "I'm going to be in Chicago. Can you fly into Chicago? I will pay for the ticket, and we'll sit down in the lounge and have an interview and go through the thing." And he's laying out this format for satellite radio. And I said to myself, well, they're not going to pay any money. And we were talking dollars, and he really was not going to pay a lot of money. And at the time, I had a kid in college. I had another one going to college in a couple of years. So I said, no, this is not going to work for me. I have to not do this. But we met in the airport. I turned around and flew back the same day after that interview. And then satellite took off like 3 years later when they finally got their act together. And then even then they were failing for a long period of time until they merged with XM. And then it became, as you said, Howard Stern carried that whole boat for a while.
Well, they burned through just gargantuan amounts of investment capital, Wall Street investment capital.
Yeah.
I mean, like Rivian is, and like Tesla was, they didn't turn a profit. They didn't make any money. I mean, to put satellites in what's it cost to maintain a satellite?
It cost them hundreds and hundreds of millions back then.
Yeah, it did.
Wow.
Yeah, it did.
Wow.
Yeah, they never saw the light of day at the beginning at all. If it wasn't for Stern, it wouldn't be around now.
And you can really thank Mel Karmazin. Remember, Mel Karmazin was the first executive to really go there with a name, and he's the one that convinced Stern because of their association with CBS and Stern. And Stern was looking for an outlet, as everybody knows, looking for a place where he could have freedom instead of having the FCC coming down on him every other week. And but Mel Karmazin had so much to do with that success.
He sure did.
Well, I remember going over to. Yeah, go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
Dick, I was going to say, wasn't it the NBC News Network that really kind of pushed satellites because they put out a date? They said like December 31st, we're no longer going to provide landlines for the news network. So stations that were affiliates had to put in satellite installations, and then pretty soon they're looking at doing it for music. So I think that was around 80, 81.
77, 78.
Pete, what was that? What was that station? WNWS?
WNWS. That was the predecessor to WYNY, where I ended up. Yeah. But that was 77, 78. And then they brought Walt Sabo in and moved the FM station away from the AM, and the rest is history. We cleared $18 million in our first year.
Well, wait a minute. History was made when you went in there when they had like negative ratings beyond zero. You took it from worst to first in the radio,
Yeah,
phrase.
they were number 22 when we made them number 1 in 9 months. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Pete,
That's incredible.
Pete absolutely killed it. I mean, he was the boy wonder for sure.
Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
He's my pimp.
Well-deserved recognition.
I owe everything. I owe my whole career to this guy.
You paid it back already.
Right.
I want to go back to something that was mentioned earlier. I think, Peter, you had mentioned that about being acquainted with the DRC in the early days when you were a kid. And I was thinking that, back then, there were such great voices, great talents on the radio. It really made no difference whether you were in Portland, Maine or Portland, Oregon. There was always interesting people on the air, creative people, and people you really wanted to listen to. And unfortunately, that's not really there anymore. We all know the reasons why, but it was such a creative time, and it was such a time that really invited you to get involved with this business, so to speak. And it just is not there anymore. But it was so easy to glom on to really good stations, hear great talent, no matter where you were, small markets, large markets. There was just a plethora of people who were involved in what we did.
I think we love what radio was, but we don't so much like what radio is.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame. It really is.
We really got to see that. We get to see that all the time, and so much is lost when you're looking at something at the same time. I mean, when we did a segment on TIC one Saturday morning and spoke to a woman who had a horse rescue group, and she explained what the horses go through and all this kind of stuff, and how horrific this was. And these animals, people would be giving their horses to someone who said, we're going to find a home for your horse and everything else, and they were getting slaughtered and made into dog food in Mexico, and everything. It was really bad. But the interesting thing was, Channel 30 went out there after that, and they spent 2 days out on her ranch. And she called me a couple of weeks later. She said, we got much better results from being on the radio with you than we did on television. And I said, that's because they weren't looking at the horses. They were looking and listening to your heart. That's what they were listening to. Never mind what was in front of them. And no matter what, I mean, that really goes back, to way back, to the old, Nixon Kennedy stuff, and how he wanted on the radio, and he wanted because he had such a glamorous look, I mean, and that's what people forget about. I think right now with radio is that the personalities was always the connection, I think, with the music.
And everybody else pipe in on this because we all listen to the various Sirius XM channels. I must say that despite the fact that they tout all the variety they play and all that, we play all this variety. Well, if you listen to classic vinyl, you do hear the same songs over and over again.
Absolutely.
But besides that, so it's segmented, formatted stuff. We get that. It's still formatted. It's still radio. But some of the personalities that they have on Sirius XM, some of them are pretty good. I gotta say, there are a couple of besides the classics, guys that grew up in our school, they've got some pretty good on-air personalities that are allowed to be personalities. Where if I'm listening to not so much to WABC or another station here locally, I just first of all, you never hear the jock anymore because they only talk like 3 times an hour. And it's usually you have to be promoting some sort of thing that the station's doing or what the website's doing or whatever. And so, as we recall, we would talk like every other song when we were all growing up, John and Steve and you guys. I mean, we had a chance to be a person within confines of a format that, I entered the business when as being going into like CHR, whatever it was. And, I realized that I had to work within a format, but you knew how to, believe it or not, there was more freedom then, even in a tightly formatted station than there is now. I mean, now nobody says anything on terrestrial radio, really, unless it's the news.
The only stations that seem to be doing well are the heavy politically opinionated stations.
Yep.
I was looking at the numbers that we all get as a gift from
Clark Schmidt.
Clark, which is so nice. The thing
Yep.
is, people are kind of, you're looking at shares.
Right.
And shares show numbers that are much larger than reality because it's a share of who's listening to radio. Whereas ratings is what percentage of the general population is listening to radio.
Yeah.
So when I take a look at a WCBS News Radio, which for years and years and years was in the top 2 or top 3 of every book in New York, and it's number 17 or something like that now, it's very sad. And yet WABC will still wind up like number 7 or 8 or 9, because their format at least is more inclusive. Whether you like their position or not, it grabs you from an emotional point of view because it's opinion. Music wise, it's a wasteland.
Yeah, one of the things
you
about,
guys are
right?
familiar with Flash Phelps on Sirius
yeah.
XM?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we listen from time to time when we're on a long drive going down to Miami or whatever. And I'm always impressed by this guy. I think he's one of the most creative guys on the radio today. The Flash Funny Farm. He has great interactions with the listeners. Of course, he travels all around to all the states and he goes to all the various landmarks, and he seems to know every exit in every state and all the monuments. I mean, he's a really interesting guy.
Without a doubt, he's incredible. That guy.
There's a video. Have you seen the video of him working? It shows, him punching in these sounders and voices and all, and it's just really amazing how he keeps it up. And I think he does 6 hours straight.
It's incredible. But he steps
on.
J-Bo
just filled in for him when he was on vacation just like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I was listening to that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably in the hospital with exhaustion.
Well, it's interesting.
More
by the way,
he does.
I know, but he's amazing. But he does step on records once in a while because all of a sudden he'll speed up at the end.
Well, that's the radio in him. But a lot of that stuff is record and re-roll, and because I hear that all the time. But and I still listen to, if I still listen to WAVZ and BLR and some of the others, but it just the magic is just not quite there, and it's unfortunate because I'm afraid there are governments out there that have taken back AM frequencies for government use. That happened in, I think it was in Finland or Norway, and there was obviously Congress has been talking about it now, but and satellite radio isn't the answer. I just think some new level of creativity that connects with a new generation is what we have to do, because you could ask 10 people under 40 years of age who Bob Hope is, and I'll bet you 5 of them don't know.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And what I'm afraid of is in another 10 years, you ask them about the Beatles and they say, no, let me see if I got any bug spray.
Oh God! But what do you think? What do you think in today's world where, the more we talk about the connection and the personalities and the followers and stuff, what about these influencers that are out on Facebook? And you hear those connections and how many people are just following, millions of people following an influencer.
Well, back in the day, it used to be Sandy Beach was an influencer, and
Right.
Long John Wade and those guys.
All you guys were,
Well, yeah.
That's right.
And of course, don't you all miss the amount of energy and physical work that you did in putting on a music show? I mean, you were queuing up records, you were refiling them, you were grabbing carts.
The term disc jockey. You're jockeying around. You got the carts going in. You got the Gates 15-inch turntable. You got to back it half and start, and then you have to hit the start button on the Gates turntable when you're saying at the Stonehouse of WINE, being and hoping that the song would start like.
Where you start the turntable before you start the jingle.
Yeah, remember that? You used to start the WINE, go.
How many of you guys try? How many of you guys would back time records? Do you ever, that was an art form. That was an art form.
What was really challenging was to be on the Big D FM to do top 40 radio with albums.
Yeah.
And you had to find the cuts, and they were 3.5, 4 minutes long, and you were running everything by yourself, not to mention trying to get the top of the hour news to sync with the AM. How about the days when in early top 40, when there were no cart machines, everything was on disc. Jock had about 5 or 6 turntables in the studio. The records were 2.5 minutes long. Most of the jocks wound up in the funny farm someplace. It was just
or here.
But
or here.
The Q burn
here,
holding the records for the Q burn, and while you're reading the last 10 seconds of the spot, you have the finger on the record, and then you lift the finger up and hope it has it stuck to the record and pull the needle off. I mean, then you hear the felt going by while the needle.
Don't you miss hearing a Q burn on the air?
I was just thinking. I was just thinking Q burn. You beat me to that.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And when you thought you were on the audition channel talking to somebody on the telephone, and you wound up being on the air.
Can you say Len Thomas?
Oh yeah, Len Thomas.
That happened to me once. Early morning WABC. I was talking about the Mets. I thought I had the mic off. The mic was on. It wasn't the audition channel. And I'm talking to my colleague, the traffic person in the other room. I said, "How about those effing Mets, man? They effing won the game last night. Holy F!" And all of a sudden, the phone started to ring. And we had like 5 phone lines, and they're all going read. I'm like, "What's this?" I answer one of the calls. Peter, turn your mic off. Peter, you know what you just? And every single person, even though I said the F-bomb 3 times, every single call that I took, they were concerned for me.
Yeah.
They're like, Peter, your mic's on. Nobody called up and said, "I'm offended about what you just said."
Bob Steele said, "God damn," one time when the mic was on and the phones lit up at TIC.
Isn't it
was
something?
unbelievable. And he actually had to come on and apologize for the language that he had used.
Oh,
I
come
think
on.
the next day he made it the word of the day.
Yeah. But I never got, I mean, like the boss, it was like 5:30 in the morning. So nobody really heard it, except the listeners who were up listening to me when I was doing mornings at WABC. And they were all concerned for me. That's what I thought was cool.
Worried about you losing your job.
Yeah, they're like, "Peter, man, you just said this,
Had you been working at DRC, Peter, you would have lost your job.
Oh yeah.
Guaranteed.
As somebody mentioned, Ed Bruder mentioned a guy named Len Thomas, nice guy, who had the misfortune of saying, not knowing his mic was on, following Brad Davis, said, "God damn effing Davis." 15 minutes later, he was outside waiting for the bus to come. He's gone.
No, that's not good. I've done some dumb things on the radio, but
I have a question for you. My first job was in '63, and I was working for a religious country daytimer. I was being paid.
What?
I was being paid.
How many strikes?
Wait a minute.
Religious country.
Religious country.
And I was doing
That's a
Sundays.
format.
I was the Jewish kid doing Sundays on the Christian station. And so they paid me $5 a day. I was carrying a first phone, so I was reading the meters and the whole thing too. So it's Christmas Day. So I'm working Christmas Day, and nobody else is working Christmas Day, which is fine. Normally, on a Sunday, I'd have 3 or 4 preachers come in, and I'd produce them. And then we'd roll their show, and I'd be doing Michigan Department of Conservation PSA tapes, and to your point of earlier, reel-to-reel commercials. That's what it was. There were no carts, and so it's Christmas Day, and I'm playing Handel's Messiah, and everything is going fine, except one thing: I fall dead asleep. So you know what happens. I wake up, and all I've got is. But what I was trying to figure out is, why were there no phone calls waking me?
Because no one was listening.
That is correct.
There was a TV station I remember hearing this story when I was in Bridgeport. There was a TV station that was running ABC down there, and they were debating whether to keep it on the air or not, if people were watching it or watching out of New York. And they're running ads or running promos every hour that call in to win $1,000, and the phones never rang. Phones
And
never
give it
ring.
away.
Oh my God.
Well, one of the best selling tricks that I used, and I know Ron to be familiar with this. I was working for another station, and I was selling, and I was trying to learn the whole business from both sides. So I'm working with this car dealer who is like not interested because nobody listens to your station. I said, okay, fine. Do me a favor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give away a 1964 Ford. I think it was a Sunliner or something like that. And so I'll just give it away an afternoon drive. I'll have the air personality take care of all of that. And then I'll bring the winner over, and he looks at me, he says, what are you, crazy? I said, why am I crazy? He said, because I'm not going to give away a car. You can't give away one of my cars on the air. They're like $2,200. You can't give away a car of mine on the air. I said, why? What's the risk? Nobody listens. So nobody's going to buy it. Nobody's going to want it.
Yep.
Signed him the next day.
Wow.
There you go.
But it was just a shot.
Was it a Ford convertible?
It was I think it was a Starliner convertible.
That was a famous Ford.
Skyliner.
That was the first car where the hood with the roof would actually fold into the trunk. Remember that?
Skyliner.
Yeah. Skyliner. Yeah.
Skyliner.
There's a plastic container in the trunk that you
Yes.
can put your luggage in.
Yes.
Thing folded down on top of that.
But it's just like nobody listens to the radio. So, well, what's the risk then? I'll give you all this promotion. Won't cost you a thing. What have you got to lose? And all of a sudden,
brilliant.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the same thing. We used to say that, if you a restaurant or something, well, nobody listens. Well, you don't mind if I go on the air then and tell somebody about how many people got poisoned last night at your place? Oh no, it's like, well, they're not listening,
Right.
Yeah. Now, when you were talking about talk-ups, and I used to love to do that, but I would back cue the albums right to about a second or so before the actual,
The vocal.
the vocal.
Mhm.
And then it was always a matter of having the right touch and not letting it go too soon. But if you really got it down, you always hit it just right. But
I love the jocks and of course, as a PD, you guys who just like have meltdowns. But I remember when George Michael would come on at WABC, and there was like what was it? William Devon. What was that song, Peter?
Don't be thankful for what you got.
Right,
Just
right.
be
He'd
thankful
talk
for
up
what
the
you
whole damn thing. He'd talk up the whole damn thing. It was a 30-second intro.
With his little stupid stopwatch, right?
Yeah, with his stopwatch. We had at 1330 Avenue of the Americas in 8B. Is it 8A? 8A? 8B was the WABC studio. I got to meet George Michael when I actually interned there. But they were on the wall behind where the engineer was. It's like I'm sitting here and I'm the jock, and then of course your board op is right straight across from you over the counter. You give them the carts over the counter. Had a carousel here. On the wall behind, as you look towards the clock on the blue walls of Studio 8A, there were marks on the wall from carts that George Michael would throw at the engineer because he missed something, or so he didn't hit he didn't start the cart at the right time. That was amazing. There were marks on the wall from carts that George Michael.
Yeah, what was it? These days he would have been out of there in a second.
Oh, George had a temper.
Yeah.
Boy, did he have a temper. But yeah, those endless talk-ups. Who's the king of endless talk-ups? Anybody that you guys?
I remember one time hearing the Grease Man on POP talking up Color My
World
by
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got about a minute and a half lead in.
And he hit the post.
He hit the post.
I think he was telling one of his elongated stories at the time. So it took a minute and a half to do.
William Devon.
Yeah.
There's so many great segues out there that have gotten destroyed for the past, I don't know how many decades, because somebody's got to drop in Kiss Mix. I mean, you get a nice segue. Instead of just having the confidence to let people know that what station they're listening to, instead of telling them every 12 seconds, you blow a beautiful segue.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we used to do early at PLR is we got into phasing because it was just at the beginning of when phasing was. I think it was even before the Doobies came out with Listen to the Music, which was probably what put phasing on the map. Although I remember, I'm trying to remember.
Itchiku Park had phasing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Itchiku, yes, it did.
And what we used to do is we had 2 Crown recorders, and we would run because we'd only choose a song or 2 to do it, and so we'd tape it and we would run it across both playback heads and have both recorders live. So in essence, you had they were probably about 3 inches apart. So you literally created the phasing, but it depended on how close you could get the recorders, because if they were a little bit further apart, then what you would have is just repeating. But if they were close enough, you got that phasing feel. And then of course boards came out right after that where you could just go ahead and do it. But it was kind of fun.
I did it one time with 2 versions, 2 recordings, 2 45s of Satisfaction by the Stones.
Yeah, you just have to let one go just at the right time.
At the right time, get the 2 of them, and then I got chewed out for it. This was at HYN. They said if they wanted
it was
on
great.
the record, they would put it on there.
I think people loved phasing because it wasn't overdone.
Well, how about the Big Hurt in the late 50s?
That was the one. That was the one that started it.
Yeah, the Big Hurt or How High the Moon. One of those was.
Yeah, it was Tony Fisher's record.
Yep.
I think that was the first one.
Yeah, probably. You're right. Yeah. Hey, I got to run, guys. See you next week.
Here, Bob.
Thank you,
Bob.
Bob.
Take care, Bob.
Take
Bob.
care.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Always awesome. Always awesome.
Well, the thing was, it really was. I was done. I had quit. I didn't care for what the whole thing had turned into. They merged 104 HCN and POP, and anybody that was in the POP 104 side basically lost all their accounts because they were given to the HCN sales staff because they were the ones that knew how to sell that type of thing. I mean, but really, the straw that broke the camel's back was when they at 9 o'clock in the morning they went to G. Gordon Liddy, and it was interesting because I had already left. I resigned. I'd done all that. We had a going away party and everything else, and it was wonderful. I mean, I left with good terms. It was fine. And Al Vicente, who was the general manager then, and Al Pellegrino was in a different position, more with the old group versus just that station. And Al Vicente said, "Yeah, we want you to stay." Well, that's because I was probably the only one, the old fart that knew what news radio was about, and that I knew that it was also a moneymaker when you presented it properly. But I'll tell you, I just said to him, I said, never mind the fact that you've got G. Gordon Liddy on the air at 9 o'clock in the morning. And asking women to send in pictures of themselves in their lingerie with guns to pose for his calendar. I said, never mind that. I said, it's the fact that at 9 o'clock in the morning, you give up on Hartford. And he says, yeah, well, you do a show. And I went, that. And he did. He said, just do whatever you like, but just please don't make it any worse. It's really not doing well right now. Please don't take the ratings even deeper than the other.
We actually brought the ratings up about a half a point.
We did all right.
We were right in. Yeah.
We stayed there, but it really was. It was just a sad state of affairs at 9 o'clock in the morning to not have something, and they just didn't get it. So we rode that for a while, and then we saw the writing on the wall with that. But it was good.
Well, they started that national day parting approach back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was really sad because you just couldn't make a comment that was relevant to where you were. Because
I think that hats off to him, connoisseur media, Dick.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Warshaw, one of the things that he emphasized, he said, look, this is not going to work. Me buying up WeBe, me buying up PLR, all these other stations in his group now, right? They're all there. ICC, WeBe, PLR, Star 99.9.
Yep.
I think
and the Fox.
And the Fox. And all, and Jeff would say this in meetings when I was there. He'd say, you know what? I want you to identify things in your local community that matter, whether it's promotions, whether it's PSAs, whether it's charity events, whether it's you guys on the air talking about hello to Bob working at whatever over there on the other, at the shop, just identifying local anything and throw it in there just to give people a sense that they have an identity with the station, because the station's actually, wow, those guys are actually telling me what's going on in the Parkway, or this event's happening next week, or they're cross promoting. So I think that I guess the rating, I can't imagine how great the ratings are for all the connoisseur stations, but they still lead in essence, I think, in some way, shape, or form in their group. But I think probably a lot of it, Dick, and you guys, is that the company does emphasize trying to be as local as you possibly can when you're on the air.
Well, I know Jeff very well and see him very often. And in fact, I was just up at the group. The group is originating out of Milford now. They have 5 stations up there, and they also have a JOA with WIBC as well. And I stay in touch. And what the irony is that I'm in Westport, Jeff lives in Westport, and Dick Ferguson, who owned the stations and sold them to Jeff, lives in Westport. But that group is in this state. It's the last real strong group because they've stayed pretty true to their format. They really have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They've punched up their social media, which they have to do. But if you listen to PLR, whether you like it or not, they're close to what they used to be. They've stayed in touch with what their musical DNA is. Right. And Star 99 has always sounded great the way it is, and Weeby is a monster, and even and then they have WLIR. I mean, yeah, they've got a couple of Long Island stations, and then like a couple of stations in Delaware.
Right. So it's not all over. If you do it right, and if you really focus, it isn't all over.
They're making money.
FM radio.
And but Dick, the funny thing is when he owned DRC, he couldn't figure out how to make money with DRC. That was the thing that was stunning to me, because he had the signal. Of course, they changed the signal. They went ahead and did that, but he couldn't make it work with DRC.
What happened there, Dick?
I don't know, because really he didn't try to screw around with the format that much. And I think, I don't honestly know. I think that PLR became such a part of the fabric of Fairfield County, not New Haven as much as Fairfield County, that if you look at their coverage and where their revenues come from, it's a much larger marketplace, and same with Star and same with Weeby, but they're all so different that collectively they give you a very, very solid rating, I think, together. But with DRC, I
think the real thing he ran into, the problem with DRC being as great as it is, as great as it was, in this, even now to this day, you've got Odyssey and iHeart dominating. They both own several stations. They have better salespeople. And I always said this, the problem that I always had was trying to find good salespeople, and keeping them. And I think that was probably part of the whole thing. And I'm sure he just decided, you know what, I'm fighting, why don't I be a king in my own market, which they are. I mean, they own Fairfield County. They own, having Weeby and PLR is a license to print money. And DRC, what am I fighting against iHeart and Odyssey for when I can, and it's 50 miles away. So what do I need that aggravation for? And I guess Fuller stepped up and he will pay the money. But remember, Fuller paid $7 million for both 5 radio stations, DRC AM and FM, and DRC AM and the 4 AMs, plus the property. 6 acres of prime real estate on Blue Hills Avenue, which is not which is an important street, and all the antenna site. I mean, so that's could be the greatest bargain of all times.
And I think he was also looking at trying to change the the culture, maybe, and maybe there was some resistance there. But look, he paid $36 million just for PLR.
Yes.
Wow.
when they worked out that deal with Cox Broadcasting,
Right.
there were a lot of plus Cox had to or Connoisseur had to give up a station they had, or there was a station they had to give up in LA and one in Miami because of multiple ownership. But it's a very complicated. It's a complicated. Well, because you were buying them for us.
Right.
And you had to work with the salespeople and
yeah, it was difficult. I when you talk about selling things, I remember back in the day when Rick Buckley owned WOR. That was his dream, was always to have an AM radio station in New York City. And because his father, if you recall, his father was the general manager of WNEW back in the 50s. And that was his big dream. And he finally was able to buy WOR. And I think he paid, I don't know, $25 million for it, whatever. Well, several years
way
later,
overpaid.
iHeart wanted to have an AM radio station. Dick, you and I know. Remember we did that meeting with them? All the FM, they had 5 FMs, which all had 1 million plus cume. Think about that.
Yes.
Each all had 1 million plus cume in New York. But iHeart offered him $200 million for WOR. Turned it down.
Turned it down.
Turned it down.
I've got a story to go along with your
yeah, man.
He turned it down, and I remember, and Rick was a very approachable, a great guy. He really was a good guy, and Steve would disagree with that, of course, for many reasons. But anyway, I said to him, Rick, I heard this, and I can't believe it. It's true. You turned down something like $200 million for WOR? He said, Ron, I'm a radio guy. I'm in the radio business. What am I going to do? Start an ice cream company? You just open up an ice cream cart? No, I'll never sell WOR. The day after he died, every member of his family had their hand out. I want my money and I want it now. Sell it. And they ended up selling it for $30 million. Think about that, how much
Well, one of the stories behind that, and I don't remember if you were with us back then, when we took over the Giants and we built the radio
that was
network.
before I was there. Yeah.
So we had run the network for about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And then Rick was starting to negotiate with OR. So he and I get on the phone and he said to me, I've always wanted to own that radio station. He said, there's got to have the station and I got to have the Giants. I said, well, look, you can have the Giants. What's the difference? But please, we built your network. I'd just like to continue running your network and I'll hand you a check every year. That's what I did. We ran the network and we were doing it for WNEW, and I had them a $150,000 check every year for their portion of it. They never lifted a finger. So he said, I can't do that. He said, I've always wanted to have the Giants. I said, you have the Giants. He said, yeah, but that's why I'm buying WOR, because I have the rights to the Giants. So I just never understood the logic given the investment that was made. And sure enough, after I think it was about 3 or 4 years, he was in real trouble. And he and I were at an NAB, we were having dinner, and he turned to me and he said, you were right. And I said, I feel terrible to hear having, I've known you for a long time. I feel terrible having you say that to me, but the network was such a small part of it. The point was that you bought that radio station emotionally. And that was the problem. And it really was the beginning of the end at that point. Yep. It was very sad.
Yep.
Sad stories in the radio world.
Yeah. Amazing.
There's a million of them.
There's a plethora of them. Oh, this programming note, you guys. Steve, are you back? Were you out checking with the leaf blower guy, or?
No, I was asking him for a job.
No,
I need work between Saturdays.
I was just said, Steve just like disappeared. There you go.
I just did a podcast yesterday with the mayor of Westport on leaf blowers.
Oh, sure. Everybody wants them out. They don't want
them. It's a huge issue, and they filed they have a not an actual law, but anyway, they brought a prohibition out for everybody. Right. And in the podcast, I'm interviewing the person in charge of it along our first select woman, Jen Tooker, and we're talking about it. And I said, okay, what is the issue? Is it about gas and energy, or is it about noise? And it's about gas and energy in terms of why we passed this not law, but you know, but he said
Ordinance.
everybody is ordinance. He said, but everybody is complaining about the noise. I said, so what do you do about it? He says, well, we send them a letter saying that they've got to check to see if they can, if they're using a fueled versus electric backpack, you know, leaf blower, and also their landscaper, because in Westport, of course, 90% of us have landscapers. So
yes, the 1%. Yes.
It turns out, then my next question was, well, what if somebody is defying it? What can you do? He says, well, we can't do anything. So well, you have an ordinance. He said, right now we're in a position where we cannot actually officially apply the ordinance. So essentially you're trying to teach people to be nice, but if they're not nice, you can't punish them.
Okay.
All right. Well, listen, that's gonna, I think you know, that kind of winds it up. Once we've gone into the landscaping leaf blower aspect, it's usually when we decide.
Career move.
It was a good way to end, because we asked where Steve was because he was checking on the leaf blower.
Right.
And then Colt's got to get in there and start on about some political thing, which it is political.
But now I feel so much better, Dick, now just knowing that down in your area, there's job opportunities for me out there when all those people have to get that work done. So
there you go. There you
but I will tell you, I will tell you one thing before I go, because it's in my heart of hearts. I can tell you, I will bet you that there's no one other than me that is more than one accidentally gotten the call letters wrong first thing in the morning on 1080 when you say WDR. Even my producer's gone. And I go, 5:35. We should be safe. It's like, it'll happen. It's always in the heart. What are you going to do?
Been there, done that.
But okay. But no,
Steve,
thanks a lot,
thank
guys.
you.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to kill this whole thing, only because of the fact we did have some issues last week, and I want to make sure we get this one nice and clean. So I'm going to jump off. Again, thanks all of you guys. Really, it means the world. And Peter, please come in. I please come back, because you know, just those few little pieces, little sparks, just bring the whole thing alive. And and everybody remember the August 18th, if you can.
Yes.
Farrell's in Portland, and please tell your friends in Connecticut that are in radio. It is a Connecticut event. And,
it's fun.
Yeah, and we do have. Oh yeah, and you know,
I'm gonna get Dick Ferguson up here to this group. He's got some great stories.
Ferguson's,
we never ever, you know, we're all in there having Farrell's and having a good time, but we never look around to see who didn't make it.
That's right.
Love, and we are thrilled with, if it's just Ron and I said in the beginning, it's just you and I at Harbor Park, we'll have a blast.
Remember the first year we did, we said, what if anybody show up? And we had about 50 or 60, maybe more the first time. Yeah, it's great.
And it's all about that. Yeah.
Hey, Ron, bring the drums, will you?
No, I got rid of them a while ago. I can't. Between my bad hands and everything.
But your son's playing.
Your son's playing big. Is he playing with a band, Ron?
No, my son is on. He follows a group called Tool. Everybody knows the group called Tool, and their drummer, a guy named Danny Carey, is one of the greatest drummers in the world. And my son is obsessed with Danny Carey. I can tell you stories about the money he spends on that whole situation. But he posts drumming videos on Instagram and TikTok almost every night, every other night. It's his passion now. Yeah, he's really something. Yeah.
Well, when your son took the drums at his wedding, he really showed off.
Remember that? Remember that, Dick? He can play. My son's a really good drummer.
On that note, Steve, now you can go. That's it. We're done.
Hey.
We're done.
We are done. All right, guys. Really, well, thanks a lot, and we're gonna look to do it again next Friday, if you can.
See you then.
And what is that going to be? The 4th,
July 5th.
Oh yeah, 5th of July.
Yeah, my sister's 50th wedding anniversary. That's going to be amazing.
Oh, mazel tov to her.
All right, guys, and God bless, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of Radio Friends Again. I'm Steve Parker. Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Later.
Your friend has got a lot to share.